The hospital room was filled with soft beeping monitors and the quiet breathing of 3 newborn babies. Daniel Carter stood beside the bassinets with tears in his eyes. 3 tiny lives. 3 tiny miracles. Emma, Ethan, and Ellie.
Ryan?
He had spent months imagining the moment he would bring them home with his wife, Rachel. They had talked about decorating the nursery, teaching the children to ride bicycles, family vacations, Christmas mornings. Every dream seemed so close. Until everything changed. 3 days after the triplets were born, Rachel quietly zipped up a travel bag.
Better hurry, they're waiting.
Daniel looked at her in confusion. Are you going somewhere? She couldn't meet his eyes.
I'll see you again very soon.
I can't do this. He smiled nervously. What do you mean? I've been seeing someone else. The words echoed through the room. Daniel felt as though the air had disappeared. Rachel wiped away tears. I thought I could end it. I couldn't. When I found out we were having triplets, I panicked. I don't want this life. Daniel stared at her in disbelief. These are your children. I know. I'm sorry. She looked toward the sleeping babies only briefly, then picked up her bag. Daniel finally spoke. If you leave, don't leave because you're tired. Leave because you've truly decided these children deserve a life without you. Rachel hesitated. Only for a second. Then she walked out. The door closed softly behind her. Daniel remained standing beside the bassinets until sunrise. One of the nurses quietly approached. You should try to sleep. Daniel smiled weakly. I don't think fathers of triplets are allowed to. The nurse laughed gently. You'll learn. I hope so. Bringing 3 newborns home alone felt impossible. The first week passed in a blur. 3 bottles. 3 diapers. 3 tiny cries often happening at exactly the same time. Daniel learned to feed one baby while gently rocking another cradle with his foot. Sometimes he placed the 3rd baby safely beside him just so none of them felt alone. He rarely slept longer than 90 minutes. Coffee became his closest friend. So did determination. His elderly neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, knocked on his door every afternoon. I made soup. Daniel smiled. You've already done too much. Nonsense. No father should raise triplets on an empty stomach. She became like a grandmother to the children. Across the street, retired mechanic George fixed Daniel's aging pickup truck whenever something broke. Pay me later. I insist. Daniel always answered. I'll pay you. George smiled. I know. But not today. The neighborhood quietly became his family. Money remained painfully tight. Daniel worked evenings repairing restaurant refrigeration systems while Mrs. Thompson watched the babies. During the day he returned home before sunrise just in time for breakfast bottles. Many mornings he felt too exhausted to think. Yet every time one of the babies smiled, somehow he found more strength. When the triplets turned 4, they attended preschool together. One afternoon Emma asked, Daddy. Yes. Where's Mommy? Daniel paused. Children deserved honesty. But they also deserved kindness. He knelt beside all 3. Sometimes adults make choices they later wish they hadn't. But one thing will never change. What? Daniel smiled. You were wanted. You were loved. And you will never face life alone. The children accepted that answer. Daniel never allowed bitterness to become part of their childhood. Birthdays were always special. Instead of one large cake, he baked 3 smaller ones so each child could choose their favorite flavor. Emma loved strawberries. Ethan demanded chocolate every year. Ellie insisted on vanilla with colorful frosting. Christmas mornings filled the small living room with handmade decorations crafted from paper, glue, and imagination. Daniel couldn't always afford expensive gifts. So he built dollhouses, wooden trains, bookshelves, treehouses. His hands created what his wallet sometimes couldn't. Years passed. His tiny repair business slowly expanded. Restaurant owners trusted Daniel because he never missed appointments. Factories recommended him to suppliers. Hospitals called him first whenever refrigeration systems failed. He hired one technician. Then 3. Then 20. Within a decade, Carter Industrial Services had become one of the state's most respected commercial maintenance companies. Even after success arrived, Daniel's routine never changed. Every morning he packed 3 lunches. Every afternoon he attended soccer matches, science fairs, and school concerts. His employees knew one rule better than any company policy. If one of my kids needs me, the meeting waits. By the time the triplets reached 12 years old, they had become remarkable young people. Emma dreamed of becoming a pediatric surgeon. Ethan spent weekends building small robots from recycled electronics. Ellie filled entire notebooks with stories she hoped to publish someday. One evening they sat around the dinner table laughing about school. Daniel quietly looked at each of them. 12 years earlier, he had feared he wasn't enough. Now he realized something. They hadn't simply survived. Together, they had built an extraordinary life. What none of them knew was that, after more than a decade without a single phone call or visit, Rachel had unexpectedly returned to the city, and before long, she would come face to face with the family she had abandoned, a meeting that would leave her completely speechless. Rachel had imagined this moment many times during the 12 years she had been away. She expected anger. She expected resentment. She expected Daniel to tell the children everything she had done. What she never expected was silence. One Saturday afternoon, she walked into the city's annual Youth Innovation Fair. She had recently returned to town after her second marriage ended and had heard people talking about 3 talented siblings who were winning awards across the state. She didn't know they were her children. The exhibition hall buzzed with excitement. Students proudly displayed science projects, engineering models, and creative writing exhibits. A large crowd gathered around one booth. A banner read, "The Carter Triplets." Emma presented a low-cost portable medical cooling device designed to transport vaccines to remote villages. Ethan demonstrated a solar-powered water purification system he had built from recycled materials. Ellie signed copies of a collection of short stories she had written for young readers, with all proceeds going to children's charities. Visitors applauded their presentations. Rachel slowly moved closer. She stared at the names. Emma Carter. Ethan Carter. Ellie Carter. Her heart began to race. Before she could process what she was seeing, a familiar voice came from behind her. "Great job, kids." She turned. Daniel walked toward the 3 children carrying 4 cups of lemonade. The triplets smiled the moment they saw him. "Dad." All 3 hugged him at once, just as they had done since they were toddlers. Rachel stood frozen. She noticed something that hurt more than she expected. The children looked genuinely happy. Not despite growing up without her, but because they had grown up surrounded by love. Emma smiled. "Dad, the judges asked if we'll enter the national competition." Daniel grinned. "What did you tell them?" "That we'd think about it together." "Good answer. We're a team." Rachel quietly wiped away a tear. Daniel finally noticed her standing nearby. For a brief moment, surprise crossed his face. Then he simply nodded. "Hello, Rachel." "Hello." She struggled to speak. "They are incredible." Daniel looked proudly at the children. "They worked very hard." Rachel looked at the triplets. I'm your mother." The 3 children looked at one another. They knew exactly who she was. Daniel had never hidden the truth. Emma stepped forward politely. "We know." Rachel looked confused. "You do?" Ethan nodded. "Dad told us years ago. But he never said anything bad about you." Ellie quietly added. "He always said everyone deserves the chance to become a better person." Rachel covered her face as tears streamed down her cheeks. She looked at Daniel. Why? You had every reason to hate me. Daniel answered calmly. Hating you wouldn't have helped them. They deserved a childhood without carrying our mistakes. Rachel could barely speak. I don't deserve that kindness. Maybe not. But kindness isn't earned. Sometimes it's simply chosen. For several long moments, no one spoke. Finally, Rachel looked at the triplets. I know I can't change the past. I know I wasn't there. But if someday you'd like to know me, I'd be grateful. The children looked toward Daniel. He smiled gently. This decision belongs to you. Emma took a deep breath. We're willing to have lunch sometime. But slowly. Ethan nodded. We have questions. A lot of them. Ellie smiled softly. And trust takes time. Rachel nodded through tears. I understand. I'll wait as long as it takes. Over the following months, they met occasionally. Not to erase the past. Because the past could never be erased. Instead, they slowly built something new. Rachel listened more than she talked. She attended school events quietly from the audience. She never expected to be called Mom. She understood that title had been earned by the parent who stayed. One evening, Emma asked Daniel, Are you okay with this? Daniel smiled. If having another person care about you makes your life better, then I'm okay. Years later, Carter Industrial Services celebrated its 20th anniversary. Employees gathered with their families for a community celebration. Daniel stood on stage to thank everyone who had helped build the company. Instead of talking about profits, he spoke about people. My greatest success isn't this business. It isn't the awards on the wall. He looked toward the front row, where Emma, Ethan, and Ellie sat smiling. My greatest success is raising 3 kind human beings. The audience applauded warmly. After the ceremony, a reporter approached Rachel. What surprised you most after returning? She looked toward Daniel laughing with the children. I thought I had left a man with nothing. She smiled sadly. I was wrong. I left the man who would become everything his children needed. The reporter asked. Do you regret it? Rachel nodded. Every day. But regret can't rewrite history. It can only teach us to value what we once failed to see. As the sun set, the triplets gathered for one last family photograph. Daniel stood in the middle. Emma slipped one arm around him. Ethan wrapped the other around his shoulders. Ellie leaned against him with a smile. Rachel stood slightly behind them. Not because anyone pushed her away, but because she understood that some places in a family are earned through years of love, sacrifice, bedtime stories, scraped knees, school lunches, and promises kept. People remembered the story because a woman who abandoned her family returned 12 years later and was left speechless by the lives her children had built. But those who knew their whole story understood that the real miracle wasn't success or wealth. It was that one devoted single father chose compassion over bitterness, raised 3 remarkable children without teaching them hatred, and proved that the strongest families are built not by those who walk away, but by those who quietly choose to stay, every single day.